Welcome, wrestling coaches. Thank you for watching this video. It's a very important video on a very big proposal that the Coaches Association is bringing to the WIAA. I'm Chris Hansen from up in Hudson.
And I'm Jason Luloff from Holman, and we represent what was formerly known as the WWCA, Wisconsin Wrestling Coaches Association. And really recently, we've dropped the C to be the Wisconsin Wrestling Association to include officials and club coaches and wrestling fans alike. So you might hear us refer to WWA in this presentation. Um, Again, we are here to bring a great proposal to you.
Well, Jason, let's start with the why. Tell me why this proposal has it been brought forward.
Yeah, well, Chris, you know what? You and I have both served on the WWA executive board for a number of years, and over the years, we've answered emails, we've taken phone calls. Through coaching, we've talked to various coaches at the events that we're at, and there seems to be just some people that really truly believe we have discrepancies in our postseason event, and so along with that information and just kind of moving into the leadership roles that you and I are in, we felt that it was really important to dive into the merit of these concerns or the wishes of people wanting us to take a look at what else we could potentially be doing to be a more united sport in the state of Wisconsin. Um, so again, lots of people have asked us to take a look at this. And it is a daunting task. It is something that seems so easy to do, but can be so frustrating with some different things that you run into when you're taking a look at that. But that is how we got here, is coaches talking to our association, asking for us to do more.
And I would say, I've been around nearly 3 decades, and the state tournament has remained fairly stagnant through that time. Rightfully so. It's a wonderful, awesome experience, but I think a lot of people do feel there's just some better things out there. So, well, Jason, you know the proposal that we're about to present. You know the whole thing. Tell me one thing. What are you most excited about?
You know, Chris, I stopped coaching 3 years ago and moved into an administrative role and still stayed very relevant in the sport of wrestling. And I think, kind of stepping away from the competitive nature of the sport has given me a broader view. And I'm really excited for the opportunity to take wrestling, what I think is the greatest sport in the state of Wisconsin, and doing a lot of great things and maybe do something even better. That's what I'm excited about. Right now, as president of the Wisconsin Wrestling Association, I have seen some coaches with some different opinions that are divisionally based. I've seen some coaches that have some different opinions on equity and you name it. And what it all boils down to is all of our experiences are much different throughout the course of the year. And with this proposal, one of the main goals was to get everybody kind of on the same page, to get people looking in the same direction. And that to me is really exciting for the growth of our sport. So you're currently coaching, Chris, like kind of what are your thoughts on this?
So in this proposal, there's a lot of great things, but I think what is going to happen with team sectionals is what I'm most excited about. I've been fortunate enough to be part of team sectionals many times, and it's been one of my most dreaded evenings of the wrestling season. And I think this change that we're going to present here makes that one single day the most exciting day of the wrestling season. So what a change to go from one of my most dreaded days to one of my most excited days. So I can't wait till we get to that part of the proposal.
Yeah, and a lot of different things, twists and turns that this proposal will have, and we'll get to that in a second. But what does it take to even have something like this? I mean, we're basically kind of blowing up the current postseason and saying this is what we would like it to be. What is the process to get the WIA to say, okay, do it?
Well, to make any change is difficult. To make a change in the tournament series is extremely difficult, and to make a change this big, it's a daunting task. And Step one is to show overwhelming support by the Coaches Association, and that's what this, quite frankly, is. Um, because what step two is the WIA has a coaches advisory committee, and they meet on April 9th. That coaches advisory committee is going to either bring this proposal forward or not. And to a large extent, the support that gets demonstrated by the coaches, the actual 342 head coaches, the advisory committee is going to use that percentage of support as their number one guide to if they should bring it forward or not. I don't this is my own personal opinion, but I think 70% would be a reasonable number. 70% of the coaches in the state believe that this proposal should move forward. That'd be about 340 coaches. If the number is less than that, then I don't know if it gets brought forward, nor should it. We don't. The WIA does not make change for the sake of making change, and so that's the first step, and so garnering coach support, step one, then you bring it to the WIA. And as I mentioned, the coaches advisory is step one. Then there's several committees above that, and at every level of the committee, it can be struck down. So if it goes forward from the coaches advisory, then it goes to the sports advisory committee, advisory council, it keeps going up and up the flow charts until it ultimately would get passed. So we're not just trying to, this is a big point, Jason, we're not just trying to win over the coaches. We have to win over the athletic directors. We have to win over the superintendents, people who are not wrestling fans. And so to say that it's a complicated and daunting task is an understatement.
Yeah, and Chris, I'm just going to add in there a little bit. We dedicated a lot of time to this, and there is no way I would have given up all the time that we did if I didn't believe that this proposal has wheels to potentially make its way through that process you just explained. I believe that our relationship with the WIAA and the fact that the executive board has passed all of our proposals that we brought through the last couple of years gives me the confidence that we can truly make a difference in this sport if we can garner that support amongst coaches. Along with that, when we're doing this process, Chris, there's some barriers here that we really have to consider. And these barriers, they don't give us the end result that maybe some people are going to be listening to us say, well, why don't you just do this? The answer to that question is because of some barriers that may be unseen to the naked eye or the general public. And just to kind of frame some of the bigger picture things, the WIAA or any person or organization for that matter isn't going to be interested in going backwards financially. Chris, I know you're a teacher. If I told you that you can do the same job you're doing right now and make less money, you would tell me that you're not interested. We have to look at the WIA along those same lines, right? Like we're going to bring this proposal to them, and if it's going to generate less money than it has in the past, that's probably not something that they're going to be interested to. And this isn't just about money either, but that's just a logical standpoint. The second thing that's going to be a barrier is the WIA, the wrestling postseason is one of the most successful things in the WIA organization on a postseason standpoint, both with its prestige and its financial gain and just how well received it is. So the WIA is going to want to know what's actually being fixed here. They're going to want to know what's broken with this that we're actually making a difference. And we're going to get to some of those points here as we keep presenting. And then another big barrier is going to be facilities and schedule. You can't just cram 2,000 matches into a facility that can't handle it or doesn't have enough mats or doesn't have enough hours in the day. We have to keep in mind that to make the postseason good, we don't want to be there all day either. We don't want to be wrestling until 11 o'clock at night. So some of those factors are schedule driven. And then I think the last thing, and this is a big one that you kind of already touched on, is the coaches don't support this. The WIAA is not going to be interested. And we're not bringing this forward to try and tell you you need to support it. We're bringing this forward because people have said, and we're listening, that we need to try to see if there's a better way to do it. So, um, with that being said, Chris, we've had some angst amongst coaches from different divisions. Can you talk a little bit about the diversity of the group here that work together?
Well, yeah, I think that the committee that has put this together, it has to be kind of talked about here because it just to make sure that everybody knows that every single demographic was included here. It was an amazing group. Let me backtrack. We put out the association put out to the entire membership notice that we wanted to do this, and we asked for people to volunteer their time, and it was going to be a lot of time, but it was going to be something that a lot of people were passionate about, and we had the 14 people you see on the screen were all came forward and said, yes, I am willing to do this work and give up that time. And I could have never predicted how amazing these people were. It's the best committee I've ever been on, to be honest with you. And I just want to point out a few things of it. So one obvious thing is it's all three divisions: Division One, Division Two, and Division Three. Um, but we also had, we had old timers. I think they'll not mind me saying that, guys like Barrow Foster, who have been around just for a long time. But we also had our young guys, the up and comers that are just so involved and so successful right now, like Cody Andrus and Kyle Kleskins, and we had administrators like yourself. We had Corey Scanlon is a club coach in the state. We had head coaches, we had assistant coaches, we had all four corners of the state represented. We had some of these guys are extremely successful, guys like Manfred Benton, so they kind of know it from that angle of the highest level. Every demographic that you would need on a committee was part of this, and that's important to understand, but it's also just important to kind of recognize these guys for what an amazing job they did.
Yeah, Chris, I am excited to get into this thing. Let's show the coaches what we came up with.
All right, well, I'm going to start individual on the individual side. So, you can read it on the screen. I'm gonna kind of just go down there. So individually, three divisions. We no stone was left unturned. We looked at two divisions. We looked at four divisions. We came up with three being the best in our situation with our 342 teams in Wisconsin. We looked at all the avenues, and we thought three divisions would remain the best. But this is where things get a little complicated and a little exciting. So the main focus, again, was to make all three divisions identical. And so what you see there's going to be 7 sectionals in each of the three divisions, which means 7 times 3. There'll be on sectional Saturday, there'll be 21 sectionals that happen. And from those sectionals, each sectional will advance 2 people per weight class to the state tournament. So if you just look at Division 3, 7 sectionals times 2 qualifiers per weight class, that'll be 14 wrestlers advanced to the state tournament. That'll be the same 14 wrestlers in Division 2 and the same 14 wrestlers in Division 3. Again, all of the divisions will be equal. And then there's just the one qualifying weekend, so there is no regional in this. Thus, the 8, like if you think of Division 1 with 8 teams entering into a regional, we're getting rid of that regional, and we're just going straight to it'll be a 16 team sectional weekend. So those are kind of the big picture items.
Yeah, and Chris, I think one of the things here in landing on 7 qualifying sites, that's an odd number. Why is that? And I think when we go to the next slide, that might make a little more sense. So let's move over to that.
Yeah. So I guess to kind of jump to a big picture there, this proposal, I'm going to say this very clearly here. This proposal is adding 28 wrestlers to the state tournament. And there are that, you know, if we wanted to, for instance, have 16 qualifiers from each site, we felt, and I'll tell you, I personally feel that's too many state qualifiers. There is a sweet spot to make the state tournament still be, what it's supposed to be, the elite wrestlers gathering together. So, you know, 560 is the number that we used to have that attended state. Now we're moving 28 more to 588, and I'm comfortable with that number. And that's kind of where that came about, is just, again, we have to get the support of the coaches. And if we start adding too many state qualifiers to the state tournament, I think we start losing support. But I think a lot of coaches, we're going to get overwhelming support with this number of 588 total state qualifiers. So if you compare these two proposals on the first line up at the top left there, you see what we currently have. Move straight across to the right, and you can see that it all evens out. Qualifiers per site, qualifiers per bracket, and then you can see the number of qualifiers. And if you look down at the very bottom right, the number of qualifiers, 196 state qualifiers, no matter what division you're in. I think that's an awesome number, equaling that 588. So that chart kind of really hits home with what you said you're most interested in about this proposal, Jason, is that all three divisions are being treated identical.
Yeah, and 7 times 2, 14. And I think one of the barriers was we're not interested as coaches in going backwards in the number of total state qualifiers. So we had to pick numbers that got us as close to 560 as we could without being too many more qualifiers, but also not going backwards. And when you start doing math, guys, it ended up being 7 sites, 2 per site. So that was how we could make that to work.
Jason, this kind of touches on your barriers that you talked about a little bit before. There's also a barrier that if we had that number be such that the WIAA, the committees above the coaches advisory committee, if they felt that for some reason the sport of wrestling was lopsided in how many athletes get to state, or I'll use this phrase, how easy it would be to get to state compared to other sports, those are where those committees don't pass it forward. So there's a sweet spot with the WIAA also at how many athletes should be state qualifiers.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to throw this one out there too to the people who think, well, why don't we do 4 qualifying sites, or why don't we do a different number of qualifying sites? There are other things too, such as how many matches you can wrestle in a day, how many officials are available for these sites, and also how long does that day take? And we took all those things into consideration to land on this: 7 sites, 2 qualifiers per site, 14 per bracket, 588 total qualifiers. So
right, we spent time talking to some of our Division III guys, like Adam Davison from Stratford, and just talked about like we want to know in a Division III gym, what would that look like across the state as far as how many teams can you have? How many athletes can you have? How long is your sectional going to be? And, you can't do it all. I remember in one of our meetings, we're sitting there, we're like, guys, this great idea would mean that it was a 16-hour tournament. And we were all kind of taken back by that. So barriers around every corner.
absolutely. Travel time, all that stuff taken into consideration when making these types of decisions.
All right, so this is what your sectional bracket's going to look like. And so, of course, a 16 person bracket. I want to point out that if you lose in that very first round, in that round of 16, you cannot go to state. You would be one and done. And that seems unfortunate on the surface, but what we have to remember is that those kids, those 8 athletes that would lose in that first round, they are the athletes formerly that never made it to sectionals. Those are your athletes that lost out in regionals. So when you kind of think about it that way, it's maybe because it's not so bad. Those guys in the previous year who didn't make it out of regionals didn't have a chance to get to state either. Once you win that first round, now you're in the hunt, and you'll see that wherever you lose at this point, you still are going to have that true wrestle back for second place. And when you'll see at the bottom there, this is really important. There's a match for fifth place and a match for seventh. What you'll learn in a little bit is that team score does matter, and that your team strength by taking fifth at sectionals or seventh at sectionals really will show through. So those are really important matches. I think they'll be exciting for the athlete himself to know that he didn't make it to state, but he is still going to be a big contributor for his team trying to advance to state. So we'll talk about that in a little bit on why that team score matters. But we do have some not really that important right now, but we did cover some things such as how we're going to seed this and where the pigtails would be. That'll come up a little bit later. But that's what our sectional bracket's going to look like.
Yeah, and talking about consistency, Chris, like this particular model, correct me if I'm wrong, but we would be using the same seating that we use currently at the state tournament right now, which would help coaches not banter about regionals, whatever, and also be more familiar with a process that you and I were really, really highly involved with, trying to really get to a point where people were comfortable with it.
Yes. I think right now, currently, you get seeded at regionals primarily based on what your season record is. And this is going to be a little bit more accurately seeded, which I think everybody will really appreciate that.
The last thing I just want to kind of touch on before we move to the next slide is we fought pretty hard to get 2 matches guaranteed at the state tournament. And now in this one, we're kind of pointing out here that in round 1, if you lose, you're done. I tried to put myself, that was a hard conversation our group had. And I just want to point out that the reason you have to be done here is 2 reasons. Number 1, for the length of the day at some of the smaller sites that can't do 3 or 4 mats, but also number of matches wrestled in a day. We felt like this true second place was necessary, being that you're qualifying 2. And then, as Chris mentioned earlier, forfeiting that one and done situation here, knowing that these athletes typically aren't normally making the sectional anyways, kind of made it sit a little bit better. And what sports also do this? Well, track and field has qualifying heats. If you drop the baton and you're the best team in the first round, you do not get the opportunity to be a state champion. So it has a similar feel to some of the other sports. All right, let's take a look at this next slide.
So now we get to the state tournament, and it's you're laid out there on a 16-person bracket, but you'll notice there's only 14 people. So number 1 seed and number 2 seed have a bye in that very first round. What you should understand is that this is the actual bracket minus the byes that is going to be used this year in the Division I state tournament. So we're going to get a feel for this bracket already this year, again minus the byes. And what is different there is I'm sure most of you know that new rule has passed in which all athletes are guaranteed 2 matches at the state tournament, and this bracket demonstrates that. But that was in lieu of not being able to wrestle back all the way to third place. So this bracket is already in play, and there's there's a few lesser known things that are going to be awesome from that. The number 9 seed, this is much talked about. Pretty much every coach has talked about the previous bracket. Number 9 seed loses to number 8. Number 8 loses to 1, and number 9 had to go home. Well, now number 9 gets to continue wrestling, and it's a great opportunity to kind of get on that podium. So this bracket has a lot of positives with it. And so we're gonna, like I said, though, we're gonna get to see this in play right away this year.
Chris, my eyes kind of go to here. Like there's 27 matches. I can see it right here. There's 27 bouts in this bracket, but over here it says 23 matches wrestled. That must be because of the buys, right?
Yeah, there's two buys on the front side, and then of course those buys go to the back side also. So that's four matches less than what would be on there. Now that's really important. That's by design. We're trying to stay within the parameters of what the WIA will allow or what will pass, or if you want to think about it, the contracts that the WIA is going to have with the university. There's only so much time in the day that we can spend there at the Kohl Center. So by having these four less matches per bracket, and you take that across all three divisions, you take that across all 14 weight classes, that that's a substantial amount of time that is going to allow this to work.
I think the other less obvious thing I'm seeing here is if I'm a state qualifier and I'm the worst one in the bracket, instead of wrestling the 1 or the 2 seed, I get the 3 seed. It gives me a maybe a more fair chance to have an experience at the state tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. You think about that. You're number 14. There's two things. Now, you're the worst guy. You don't have to face one or two, but you also, even still, are going to get that second match on the backside. So yeah, it's just a lot of benefits, a lot of benefits all around.
All right, let's move over to this slide.
Well, so here, just a little bit to look at and kind of see the numbers from the current system to the proposal. And again, you'll just notice on the right-hand side just how every division is treated identical. And I think fans are going to really have a better experience with that, and us coaches are going to just be in so much more alliance with that. You do see that the total matches goes up from 910 to 966, and again, I already talked about the fact that there's 28 more competitors at the state tournament. So the number of matches are going to go up, and they're going up also because of the new bracket. So that's going to take some of that time, added time that I've already talked about, and that's why we can't just keep adding and adding and adding time on the mats. It just doesn't work that way and would not be feasible. So we're already adding time, but I think we're adding time that is manageable.
Yeah, and you know what? When I look at this bracket, I'm just going to flip back here for a second. When I look at this, let's just say that the time is there. It kind of looks like we could expand in the future.
Yeah. A lot of things, we're not talking a lot about this, but a lot of these things, part of our committee meetings talked about in the future. This would be able to seamlessly move into the picture without disrupting anything. So there's a lot of room for growth. And I think we're going to have growth. Wrestling's in a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's dive into the team structure here. So, team state, team qualifying system. We're still going to stick with 3 divisions, just like the individual system. We're going to mimic the individual system with our 7-team sectionals. That will still align. So, there will be 21 sites across the state. And number of qualifiers is going to be 7 automatic qualifiers per division plus 1 wild card, meaning all 3 divisions are going to qualify 8 teams to the team state tournament. We talked about that score earlier. Chris did 6 teams per a sectional site will move on. And currently right now we're moving 2 teams on. So we're going to bring the top 6 from that sectional tournament onto the team qualifying event, and that just gets more teams involved. And then we're going to have a qualifying weekend, not Tuesday night. I know one of the biggest gripes I hear across the state, those who participated in the Tuesday night duel, they know what I'm talking about. We would move this to the weekend.
So Jason, just to reiterate, did you just say that there's going to be 24 teams that are now going to get to go wrestle at team state?
Yeah. Yeah, there will be 8 in each division, 8 in Division 1, 8 in Division 2, and 8 in Division 3. And I'm telling you what, that makes Team State way more relevant and exciting.
Well, it also makes it so much more of a possibility for so many more teams to the teams that maybe they've never been there, but they're thinking we've got a chance. Well, that number of teams that just said we've got a chance just expanded greatly.
Same thing with team sectionals, Chris. Look at 42 teams per division are going to move on to the team sectional. That's an uptick too. Talking about stepping stones and levels to wrestling, it's all built into the system. All right, so once you get to the team sectional, let me move this real quick. So once you get to
Well,
the
Jason, can I just interrupt you? At the
yeah,
beginning of our presentation, this is what I said is the thing that I'm most excited about. So I just want to enter enter that in right there.
absolutely. And we're trying to we're even thinking here about like how are we using the same systems all year long over and over again. We can if we're all using the system, we can run a fine comb through it, figure out what we don't like, make some changes. And one of those systems is going to be used right here. That is our team state seating. We currently use this system right now. We have for years. It's worked fairly well. The teams involved understand it. Those that have never done it probably don't have a clue what it is. But basically, in our sectional, you're going to have 42 teams in a sectional or in a division left. What we're going to do is we're going to take all 42 teams from Division One, all 42 teams from Division Two, all 42 teams from Division Three, and we're going to run it through that seeding process. That computer is going to spit out 1 through 42 in a seed. And from there, we're going to take the assigned WIAA sectionals that are based on geography, and we are going to then figure out the seeds. So the highest seeded team in 1 through 42 will go to this spot. That could be the 3 seed overall or the 9 seed overall, but the highest seed in the geographical sectional will go to that spot. The next highest seed will go to this spot, then this spot, then this spot, and so on and so forth. So that what we're going to end up with is a team sectional bracket that the top 2 predicted teams are going to end up with a bye, leaving us with some great duels here 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. Now, I know that one of the sticking points in qualifying for the team sectional is great. Now I go get to get my butt kicked by you fill in the blank. In this model, that's probably not going to happen. We're going to have some relevant duels here with a 4 and a 5 wrestling each other and a 3 and 6 wrestling each other, and the winners getting their opportunity to work their way through the system.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, so you're saying when we Division Three seeds their 42 teams and all of a sudden we kick them back to the geographic location, the number 13 seed could now become number 1 seed. That's what you said?
Yeah, they could. It's just the highest seed, 1 through 42, in that sectional goes to the number 1 spot, and then the next highest. Also, though, you could have the top 2 seeded teams in the whole division, Division Three, in the same sectional, and they'll go here and here.
But I'm seeing a wrestle back there, so that might be okay. We'll probably get to
Yeah,
that later.
we're going to get to that. Notice here that if you win first round, you go here. Even if you lose there, you go here and you get a chance to wrestle for true second, which we are going to get to on this slide right
Well,
here.
hold on one second, Jason. Go back to that. So I'm seeing a couple things. I'm seeing that there's only ever 2 matches being wrestled per round.
Yeah,
That makes it available for pretty much any gymnasium in the state.
I would.
That's awesome. So I don't care what school you have, you can host this amazing sectional because you only are putting down 2 mats. Is that correct?
Yeah, or you could get really creative and pick like some really big areas and have multiple divisions come run this same bracket in there at the same time.
Okay, so a large school like Hudson could hold the Division One sectional and the Division Three sectional at the same time in the same facility.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I look at that matchup. It's so awesome not to see number 1 versus number 8. I guarantee number 8 does not want to wrestle in that match. But I look at that first round matchup. There's going to be number 6 seeds that are going to pull that first round upset. I guarantee it. That's exciting from the very first round. You don't need to wait until the semifinals. You don't need to get to wait. You don't need to wait till that 3rd and 4th place match. That first round, 4 versus 5, 3 versus 6. I'm seeing excitement from the at 10 o'clock a.m. So that's a pretty cool team section.
And you know what, Chris? We were really worried about taking the team score to get to an individual tournament score to get there, but we're taking the top six. We're really confident that the top two teams from each sectional lies in the top six of the team scores. And we actually dug through data and we proved that to be very, very true, almost 100%.
Right. And in the past, like in Division One, where you had to be the top, the regional champion to get to the team sectional, now the regional champion runner up, it was possible that in somewhere across the state that the wrong team never made it through. But yeah, you're right. Top six, you're gonna be in that field.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a look at this wild card situation. So one of the biggest gripes is when the WIA places us geographically, sometimes we can't control that the two best teams in the state are 5 miles apart and in the same division. They're going to obviously end up together in this system. So we need a solution for that. And here's what this is, a wild card bid. So this is the same bracket you just saw. Notice here that I have these red circles. The winner, they are automatic qualifiers. If you win your team sectional, you automatically go to team state. And we need to know who the second place finishers are because the second place finishers are going to have a 1 in 7 chance of being the wild card. So how we would figure that out is we would take all the champs and the runner-ups. That would be 14 schools, and we're going to run it through that exact same system we talked about before, the team state seeding system. And it is going to spit out seeds 1 through 14. The highest seed that isn't one of the 7 automatic qualifiers will get that wild card bid for that division. Even if this person, this second place team is number 2 overall, that's the team that's going to get it. And that would also prove why this is a valid system, because that would say that the system believes the top 2 teams in the state existed in that sectional.
Yeah, and then kind of foreshadowing to the team state tournament. I don't have any evidence of this, but that wild card team, I think some people, their brain might go, well, there's your number 8 seed at state. I don't think so. That wild card team, they're going to be a high seed at the state tournament more often than not. And I don't know if that's going to be true, but that's how I feel, and that's really going to prove that the wild card is so valuable.
All right, Chris, now this is probably one of the pieces that people are most excited to see about this entire presentation. But before we dive into this, there's just something I think that's really important that I want to point out. The committee that worked on this put all of their time and effort in the process and the system in which this system's going to drive wrestling. So before they even looked at which teams would go where or how this divisional split works, the committee wanted to fall in love with how the postseason would work without knowing what teams would be where. And I think that's a really important thing because naturally people want to know is how does this affect Chris Hansen and Hudson? Or how does this affect Jason Luloff and Holman? And I think really what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make the sport of wrestling better. And to do that, to find a lasting thing that's going to work for everybody, we have to remove ourselves and our personal opinion of what it does to our team.
Yeah, just like we're presenting this part last, this was the last part that as a committee we created. We created the process. And then when it was all done, then we came to this spot here in the breakdown of where the cut lines are for division. So, currently, I think most people know that in Division One, there's 128 teams. And then what happens is Division Two and Division Three split the remaining teams. Our new system is going to drop Division One down by 16 teams to make that an even 112. And Division Two will have an even 112. And again, that number is relevant because that is 16 times 7. If you didn't know that, that equals 112, thereby guaranteeing in any sectional bracket, there would never be a pigtail in Division One and Division Two. What that leaves us with is all the remainder of the teams will fall into Division Three, and currently that will be 118 teams, so just a couple more. And hopefully wrestling is going to grow and that number will grow. And I think that'll be awesome. And we could even grow to a spot where we need to make adjustments. But this is where our data put us.
Yeah, and let's kind of give some more visuals to everybody here. Before we do that, I just want to kind of cover a few things. So we've heard uh, a great deal of people asking for equal divisions. And, one of my first responses, Chris, has always been equal meaning what? Equal number of teams in each division, 114, 114, 114. Equal representation of ability to make it to state. So then you'd have to look at how many regional participants are in Division One, how many regional participants are in Division Two, and how many regional participants are in Division Three. And so like equal divisions is a great concept, but how you arrive at equal can look very different. So a majority of people, when they say equal division, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about 114 teams in Division One, 114 teams in Division Two, and 114 in Division Three. If we were going to look at an equal opportunity to make the state tournament with the number of regional participants that we had last year, the data suggests that this would be the breakdown. Division One would have 105 teams, Division Two would have 106 teams, and Division Three would have 131 teams. That would mean that every wrestler that wrestled in Wisconsin had the same percent chance to make the state tournament on a person to number of qualifier ratio. And so equal can mean a number of different things. We landed, as you suggested, at 112 in Division One and 112 in Division Two because there's a few things in this planning process that make this important. And one of those is that we don't go over the 6 match limit per day. And our data suggests that Division One and Division Two are the only divisions that are in jeopardy of potentially having that happen. So if we make Division One and Two an equal 112, that puts 16 teams in each of the 7 qualifiers. Well, as long as there's 16 teams in the qualifying sectional, we'll never have to worry about that quote unquote pigtail or preliminary match being an issue. So that is why 112 was decided for Division One and Two, and the rest of the teams in Division Three, which if we have the same number of teams next year would be 118. The other thought here is that competitive balance is this new concept in the WIAA, and we don't really have an answer for that. And so one of the things is that we know that teams will always be moving from Division Two up to Division One when they have success. We also know that successful Division Three teams will be moving up to Division Two, which basically says that Division Three could potentially be emptying some, but not really gaining any other better teams. So with that being said, we figured having a few more additional teams in Division Three was an acceptable thing, in addition to some of the numbers I'm about to show you right here. So what this is showing, Chris, and then I'll let you do a little talking if you need to, but right now, Chris mentioned we generally have 128 teams in Division One. This 128 corresponds with this year. This 128 corresponds with this year. This 126 corresponds with this year. The reason why this isn't 128 is 2 teams were assigned to a regional and then never actually provided any wrestlers. So when we did this last year, there was 1,456 wrestlers in Division One at the regional tournament. There was this many wrestlers in Division Two at the regional tournament, and this many wrestlers in Division Three in the regional tournament. So what this graphic is displaying here is with our current system, we have way more wrestlers competing in Division One than in Division Two and then in Division Three, which makes sense because there are more teams in Division One. There are the same number of teams in Two and Three generally, but we can see that Division Two is producing more participants. Anything to add there, Chris?
No, that's perfect.
All right. So we told you we crunched a bunch of data. I'm not even going to dive into this at the moment, but we had a whole team of people led by Mark Natsky that that literally looked at everything possible from weight classes to the last 3 years' data and trends. And will we be able to run these events in a timely manner? Will we have an opportunity to have 6 matches in a day or 7 matches in a day, or what would that look like? And we crunched everything and compared it to our current system to this proposal to land on our feet that we are very confident that this will be a nice split in our divisions where we have 112 teams in Division 1, 112 in Division 2, 118 in Division 3. If we put those numbers from our data dive into these corresponding years, last year we would have had 1,272 wrestlers in Division 1, 1,210 in Division 2, and then 980 in Division 3. So even though we had 6 more teams here, we still had significantly less wrestlers in Division 3. So again, we're trying to validate Division 3 having a few more teams. I think, again, we're worried about having more than 6 matches in a day. At 112, we don't have that worry. That is mathematically eliminated. It is mathematically possible in Division 3. However, our data suggests that until Division 3 grows at least 200 more wrestlers or more, we're never going to have that issue.
Yeah, and these numbers are always going to fluctuate. There's not always 342 teams. If you look at that 118 from Division 3, if 3 schools co-op with 3 other schools, now it's 112. But hopefully that's not the trend. Hopefully it's going to go up a few, and there's room for it to go up a few. In fact, there's room for Division 3 to have quite a few more schools to get that 980 up to 1,200, which would be awesome. So I think it works out really well.
And then we told you we did some data dives. Here's some more information with 2 and 3 year averages, looking at a number of different things. If you are a numbers person and the data gets you excited, please reach out to Mark Natsky. He is the driver of our data and the mathematician behind the madness. So, but again, you need to trust us here that we've looked at just about everything that you can imagine number related. Just to kind of sum a few things up here, Chris, I think if I was going to give this group of people just some takeaways here is the proposed system should generate the WIAA about the same revenue as they had in the past. And while doing that, it involves more communities in our team process. It eliminates a Tuesday night duel for the team. It certainly showcases some of the best wrestling of the year in those duels. Whereas last year, or this year, we'll have Tuesday night be that night where maybe 2 to 4 communities at most are involved in this process, to a much bigger weekend where a lot of wrestling fans can watch these duels. It provides some flexibility in growing wrestling. It provides some future solutions to some more things that we think could improve in wrestling, such as going from 14 in a bracket to 16 in a bracket. To make that a possibility, you've got some options. You can add a wild card to the individual tournament if you like our team wild card system, or you could simply add an 8th site and have your 16 qualifiers. So we have a lot of future solutions here to address some of the other things in wrestling. But what it does do is it gives the WIAA an ability to say, yeah, we can get behind this because the schedule is going to be roughly the same. The number of matches wrestled are going to be roughly the same. The number of qualifiers are going to be roughly the same. And then after we implement this for a year or two, we're going to get the ability to make some future decisions, that are going to be more easily accepted again. And then the last thing here that I really like about this whole thing is that it kind of takes the biggest bullet points of talked about things that coaches say is a negative with our postseason. And it may not provide the perfect solution, but it addresses most of those things. And, you and I started this conversation by saying that we really, really wanted to bring something forward. We felt it was our duty to listen to our members and bring something. And through a lot of meetings, a lot of data diving and conversations with Mel and the WIAA, we think that this proposal has the best possibility to be accepted.
So the purpose of this video and is for people to be able um, to gain an understanding of what the proposal is. And I would just encourage everyone to look at it rather than pick it apart. Look at all the great things that it has, and then simply look at it and say, boy, I wonder if they thought of this, or is there a possibility that this could work with it? It's easy to look at this from a negative vantage point, and I don't know if that's doing anybody any good. Look at it from a positive vantage point. That doesn't mean this is perfect, but kind of have an open mind and look at this for all the great things it does, and then vote come sectional Saturday based on what you think there.
Yeah, and so you mentioned sectional Saturday. So at the sectional tournament, each community that has a wrestling program is going to get an opportunity to weigh in on this as a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and we're gonna crunch that data and let everyone know where everything is at. And then in the meantime, we're gonna offer some listening sessions for you. I'm gonna hopefully be running those sessions. If not, someone of knowledge will. And what we'll do is we'll open up the floor to anybody to bring your questions, to bring your suggestions, and really just converse in an open setting around the idea of this change. We're hoping that we're going to foster some great relationships. I know Chris mentioned earlier that this is probably one of the coolest committees he's ever served on. And I think no matter what, if this gets voted down, Chris, the conversation and the thought process that went behind this is going to be valuable to our sport. And again, that's something I'm very proud of. So some listening sessions coming up. If you've got thoughts, please join those. That'll be with me. And then if you want some clarification, Chris, why don't you tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, so I think where I'm what works for me is to just reach out to me personally. My email's everywhere, and I like those little one-on-one conversations, mainly for clarification. So, if you've got some big ideas, that's awesome. That's where we'd really like you to join a listening session with Jason. But if you want clarification on something, you just want to know a why behind something, shoot me an email. And of course, a lot of you know my phone number too. Just give me a call. So I like that a little bit more of the personal conversation. And if it's a bigger topic, join the listening session.
Absolutely. So we again are going to send this to you now. You're seeing this now. We want you to engage in conversation with your colleagues. We want you to go to the tournaments and during the break room, have a conversation around this idea. And when you come into something that you don't like or you think you have a better idea, like jump into one of these listening sessions because I'm sure other people are thinking the same thing. And let us try and help you understand how we got to where we got. We couldn't possibly explain every conversation we've had along the way in this what ends up being probably a long video, but we're doing our best to bring forward transparency and solutions. And so please take that for what it's worth and be a part of growing Wrestler to a bigger, better place. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.